Hello, and welcome to the Futurum Tech Webcast. I'm Shelley Kramer, Principal Analyst here at Futurum Research, and today I'm joined by Manu Vohra, Managing Director, Global Life Sciences for Box, and we're going to have a conversation today about collaboration in the life sciences industry. In the last decade, it's a little bit of an understatement to say that the life sciences industry has undergone significant digital transformation. In fact, I think just about every industry has. But today we're talking about life sciences. The industry is also facing enormous market pressures, navigating new regulations, new and ever changing regulations, I should say, and dealing with the continued impact of a tiny little global pandemic. As a result, it's become even more important for all players in the life sciences industry, from pharmaceutical companies, researchers, manufacturers, and the entire supply chain, to share research, data, and resources within their partner ecosystems. This allows the ability for quick innovation, which of course is important. Think vaccine development. For just one example, but quick innovations on solutions that improve patient outcomes the world over. So all of that is easy to say and a lot more difficult to actually make a reality. And so we're going to talk today a little bit about what organizations in the life science industries can do to improve how they can use technology to help spur innovation. And I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. Manu, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Futurum team, for having me. Like Shelley said, my name is Manu. I lead life sciences for Box. I work for a tech company now, but I actually came from life sciences. I grew up in the life sciences, as you say. My first job out of college was working for a little company called Sharing Plow, which is now part of Merck, working on a consent decree program, which was basically the FDA saying, we're going to padlock you guys unless you get your act together. So it was a fun little baptism by fire way to start my career. Yeah, no pressure at all. Yeah. About 200 people thrown onto a project with the FDA breathing down your neck was a lot of fun for sure. It taught me a lot of things, but I'm happy to be here today and speak about how the life sciences have changed and what the pandemic impact has been and how we're progressing.
Well, I can't wait to dive in. So we're going to start with a little background. Obviously, we know that life sciences organizations are looking at solutions to help with patient outcomes. And so let's talk a little bit, if we could, about document storage and the role that plays in delivering on better patient outcomes.
Sure. So there's a lot of content. It used to be called documents. The industry term used to be document management. That slowly changed to content management because documents turned into essentially videos and audio files and images. So, and then now that's changed into basically from content management to cloud content management because everything is going to the cloud. But the concept still remains that traditionally the way we used to manage documents were all around manual processes, like literally submitting documents to a clinical trial involved literally filling up a truck full of files and folders and sending it down I-95. Yeah. So that's how we used to actually manage physical documents. And a lot of the older processes are kind of still there. And we've kind of grown from there a little bit. So digital transformation was a term that was happening about 10 years ago. People started moving to the cloud. But just the way that tech stacks have evolved has still put documents across various different repositories. So I still have some documents sitting in a file, literally in a filing cabinet. Some is sitting with one vendor. Some is sitting on an on-premise application. There's still a lot of silos across the landscape. And how that kind of changed a little bit in the pandemic was some of the manual processes around these documents got digitized overnight. Some companies did a great job by essentially doing the cutover. Some of them were running around, and trying to figure this out. But I think it's been a normalizing factor in the industry for us. But the content fragmentation problem is still something we're trying to solve.
I say this a lot. I think that I'm a bit of an eternal optimist, and I'm also really pragmatic. So, but what I look at and when I talk with, people all over the technology space about navigating a global pandemic is that there are a lot of silver linings, and this is one of them, I think. So when you're forced to embrace rapid change,
Yeah,
sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think, the thing that organizations quickly learned is that digitization is no longer optional,
yeah,
and that real-time sharing and regulations and being able to do more,
yeah,
facilitated by technology, is really what's super important. And I think that whether you're talking about something as simple as patient document records, aren't we all patients? And haven't we all had to deal with getting our records from one provider to another provider? And haven't we all said, there's just got to be an easier way, and that's just, kind of at a really granular level with one small example. But when you look at it in terms of gigantic organizations, there's some really important needs there, right?
absolutely. Like at a micro level, an example is just clinical sites where patients go in to get drugs. You
Yeah,
would normally have those patient records in a folder in a filing cabinet.
yeah,
Several of the clinical sites actually, maintain them that way. And then you have these monitors that literally fly out to these sites to go inspect them or review them periodically. When the pandemic hit, and then travel restrictions were still in place, but clinical trials started back up, there was no way for the monitors to actually get out to the clinical site. So they had to
right.
digitize. They were forced to do that. In the beginning of the pandemic, you literally had people holding files up to the Zoom cameras to kind of showcase what they're doing. I mean, can you imagine, like, you said, there's got to be a better way, and like people
Right.
figured it out pretty quickly from there.
Well, and it's one of those things, again, silver lining is that, a lot of times companies, organizations of all sizes, with the very best of intentions, sort of make a to-do list. And,
Yeah,
this is top priority, this is top priority, whatever. And even though they know they need to, do this, digitize their documents, sometimes it doesn't make that to the top of a list. So I do feel like the pandemic sort of benefited all of us as a
yeah.
whole in terms of forcing that to happen. So big silver lining for sure.
Absolutely. There's multiple silver linings that kind of came out of it.
Yeah.
Another one at the macro level is around essentially general collaboration between researchers and R&D. So today innovation can come from an organization of any size in any part of the planet, because you have so many people working on, especially in the therapeutic areas like oncology. There's a lot of investment flowing there. So there's a lot of biotechs, a lot of research going on in cancer research. And you have these small biotechs with 4 or 5 people working on them, and breakthroughs can come from anywhere and any size. Now in that scenario, you need to be able to work outside your digital walls to kind of collaborate with all these, these innovation vectors that are coming up there. And then what the pandemic did was it forced larger companies that were generally walled off to start working even with their competitors. And the reason for that is normally R&D costs are really high, but this time, it's time boxed. We have to get things done. We have to get it done faster. So competitors literally started sharing molecule data and research data just to reduce the cost and also increase the time to bring therapies to market. So I think that's a great thing for essentially for humanity, but for the life sciences industry to also kind of get a hold of all the R&D costs.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to shift a little bit and talk about the fact that, of course, as we all know, life sciences is a heavily regulated industry. And there are these little things called security and compliance that organizations need to think about. And I want to preface this just popped into my head when I'm thinking about it, because even today, I cannot tell you how many times an organization, sometimes very big companies, ask me for information, ask me for PII, personally identifiable information, that they would like for me to put into an Excel spreadsheet and email to them. Or they would like me to put into an email and send to them, or documents or whatever. And because security is one of my coverage areas because I'm a little bit of a freak about security and because I know way more than many, ordinary average people do about security. I understand the huge risks that are associated with that. And then when you extrapolate that out to the life sciences industry and healthcare
Mm.
in general and research organizations who are huge targets
Yeah.
for cyber threat actors, security. I mean, of course, compliance is its own animal, and that's incredibly important, but security is no small thing. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit about why the way we've always done it thinking is absolutely positively not going to cut it anymore.
Yeah, we're living in a flattening world, and both security and compliance have actually never been more important for the
Yeah,
life sciences. Today, I think 1 out of 3 of my customers carries ransomware insurance. That wasn't a thing even like 5 years ago. So
right,
like that just goes to show like how much of a threat this is. But and even though the tools we're using have kind of evolved to be better at handling security, not everybody's using them,
right,
and the processes around around all these heavily regulated and high value items like patient records and HIPAA records and those types of things, we don't have the right processes and governance controls around these. We're still using the old processes,
right,
which means even if you have the right tools, you're not using them. It's tantamount to putting a square peg through a round hole, right? We have to
right.
kind of update the processes around our applications today. Uh, yeah, I completely agree, and it's the same story from the compliance side of the house as well. You are working to sell more drugs or devices in other parts of the planet, and every country you go to, you need to follow slightly nuanced or different regulations. So it essentially increases the overall cost of the compliance ecosystem because you're working with several healthcare authorities right now with all of their own controls.
Right.
So and in this scenario, if you're using older processes, it gets extremely tedious to get anywhere, to release any new innovations and or therapeutic areas in new parts of the world.
Well, it can be for sure a little mind-boggling when you start thinking about this in a global manner. And, regulations in the United States are one thing, and Canada is another thing, and APAC
Yeah,
is another thing. And it's just like, it really is mind-boggling. And so, being able to, I think, rely on technology solutions that can help facilitate that is incredibly important.
absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit now, if we could. You mentioned this before, and are there other things that we should touch on in terms of collaboration in life sciences organizations, or have we already covered that?
No, there's lots. I could talk about it all day, but yeah,
I kind of thought so.
yeah. I think some of the key themes are when you are if you accept the premise that you have to collaborate today externally in order to bring the right innovations to market, then you also have to kind of update your processes and your tech stack base to essentially support those new ways of working.
Right,
And just the way the applications and tech stack has evolved, we used to go out in the life sciences and go buy applications for each and every individual solution. And then when we went to the cloud 10 years ago, and that cloud adoption has been increasing, we kept the buying pattern stayed the same. We still kept buying individual applications, only instead of on-premise applications, we're buying them from cloud vendors.
right.
So essentially, that's basically created all the same levels of silos and the fragmentation. But where we really need to go in the future is to kind of change the way we think of solutions and content management across an organization, from being individual point solution based to be more of a platform. So I think those software decisions today are slowly becoming platform decisions.
Right.
So I can't go to a conference today without everybody saying that they're a platform. So,
You are
which is also
correct.
another, yeah, that's another problem. Not everybody is a platform. Some are, but that's definitely the direction where we're going.
It is 100, and I go to more conferences than I can count, with the number of clients that we have in the technology space, and you are 100% correct. Everybody says they're a platform, everybody wants to be a platform. But, stepping back from that, you know, when you think about what happens across, especially the enterprise, but this happens in small to mid-sized companies as well. Somebody stumbles across oh, this tech solution sounds great. I'm going to buy this, or I'm going to buy, and somebody else is buying this one, and somebody else is buying this one. And pretty soon you've got this proliferation
Yeah.
of solutions that aren't connected in any way, that aren't talking
Yeah.
to each other in any way, in many instances that IT doesn't even know you're using.
Yeah.
And that creates its own very large nightmare, and
Yeah.
certainly creates, as you said, silos that can be very, very difficult. So now I want to talk a little bit about cloud content for life sciences from Box, and why this is a solution that may not
Sure.
be on your radar screen, but we think you might want to learn more about it. So let's hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Boxthread, this is the problem we're trying to solve, is to essentially bring content management as a horizontal solution across the enterprise. So there's content across the enterprise. We want to be able to capture that and manage that
Right.
across the enterprise. So we're not here to solve individual kind of solution problems, but we're a platform. So the story there is to be able to support content management needs across the enterprise, which will essentially end up supporting upstream and downstream processes. Because whatever process you're working on today, let's say you're working on a drug discovery process, you find a molecule, you're working on it, later on it's going to go into clinical trials, then it goes into regulatory submissions, and eventually you start selling the drugs. Now you're putting that information into PowerPoint decks and sales materials, and eventually it's going to get onto the manufacturing floor. Now, moving that information across from each part of the value chain, if you have multiple solutions, it becomes almost impossible, if not tedious. So that's essentially the horizontal integration that we're proposing to try to solve. And and I mentioned earlier how everybody's kind of bringing up their kind of own solutions. In order to solve this, what a lot of people also are doing today is bundling a lot of solutions. So if you think about going to like a fruit vendor, and this guy has the best apples, and you're going to go buy the best apples ever made, and you're buying there, you buy some apples, but he's also got some pears next to it. So, and he's going to bundle the apples with the pears. And now, do you buy the apples with the pears, or do you go to the guy, in the back, who sells the best pears? So, we call this best of breed,
Right.
really. And really, the idea there is to be able to pick and choose the best capabilities for your organization, and actually, use the best capabilities in a best of breed stack, as opposed to buying these bundle solutions that have essentially, ebbs and flows in performance, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So speeding up workflows, maintaining compliance, reducing your IT footprint, which I spoke to a minute ago, and then being also able to facilitate collaboration on both regulated and non-regulated content from a single place.
Yeah.
That's kind of the value proposition here that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't think that you need 150 SaaS solutions to solve, problems across the life sciences ecosystem. Putting both regulated and non-regulated content, it's on the same platform. It's not all in the same folder, right? We have capabilities to kind of service all the different functions across the enterprise, but putting all of it on the same platform kind of reduces the overall costs of the ecosystem, and it makes it extremely simple for end users. And for us, the end user experience is very important. Whatever capabilities we try to release, we want it to be simple but powerful. And that
Sure.
extends to things like process automation. So doing things that would normally take 5 or 6 clicks, we want to make it 1 click. Sharing things within a workflow, we want to be able to automate it. So you know you and I work in the same team can automate our workflow, versus traditionally we would need to go talk to IT, get a couple of admins on it, and create a workflow that's going to basically outlive all of us, because we're too
Right.
bothered to change anything.
Right. Right. So I know that there are some key benefits for Box's Content Cloud for Life Sciences. There are, maybe just a handful of integrations. And I know there's a really robust set of APIs, but let's have you speak to that if you would for me.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we have over 1,500 active integrations today. So this
Right.
kind of leads into our best of breed story, right?
Absolutely.
We have several capabilities, but if you are using a solution of choice, we're happy to integrate into your into your ecosystem. So we have over 1,500 active integrations today that we run and maintain. We have a very busy business development team that's working on that, including several engineers. But we also have a very robust set of APIs. So in the scenarios where you don't have an active integration to a tool you want to use, you can tap into our APIs and essentially build your own application. So, for example, we have customers who recently built a complaints application for receiving complaints around a device, that they manufacture. So
Yeah.
they're using Box to essentially absorb all the complaints that are that are coming in and to process those. So there's no fixed application for it that they had, so they essentially built one
Yeah.
on top of Box.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I love in these conversations, I love hearing some customer success stories. So I'm hoping you came with some that you might be able to share with us. I'd love to hear some.
Sure. I got several, but
I think so.
here's a cool one. We have a customer who essentially runs global clinical trials, and you might have heard of this thing called an informed consent form.
Yeah.
So anytime you go to the doctor's office, or especially if you're running through a clinical trial or taking some drugs, you might be familiar with this form that you have to sign off, called an informed consent form.
Yep.
To the people in the industry, that's not just a form; it's a heavily convoluted process. So normally, once you fill out that form in the back end, it has to touch about 40 to 50 different people in the back end for several stages of approvals and go through different applications. So, and that normally ends up taking like multiple months, if not weeks. And actually, the overall process until where it ends up in its end repository is going to outlast even a year. But we have a customer who essentially took that process and automated the entire thing on Box. The advantage there is that at one end, you can sort of consume the content into Box, so you can get the form in. But once you have that content, you can capture the rich metadata around that content as well, and then actually move it through the workflow of connecting to the different approval cycles, the different applications, and also push it into an end state repository if it's not Box. This process normally would have taken several months, and we're doing it literally in days now.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So I mentioned the complaints application. We also have customers today doing things around pharmacovigilance. So this is where you actually find some issues with the drug or some kind of
Right.
safety concerns. So investigators who are actually essentially doctors working on clinical sites get involved to essentially investigate what happened, who the patient was, and this is an adjudication process that spans multiple investigators. We're deploying that process in Box as well to essentially support actively processing those reviews across multiple healthcare professionals and adjudicators to
Right.
run through the process, confirm who the patient was, confirm if the drug was actually administered at the right place at the right time, and then come to an eventual agreement and disposition of the case.
Right.
Again, this is another one of those acceleration stories where this general process would have taken a lot of phone calls, emails, and many times, even if you can believe it, faxes. I mean, try to push a patient record through a phone call or through a
Yes.
fax. It's impossible. But we're essentially doing that in Box today, and we're automating the entire thing as well. Another
Well,
cool one I
that's
had is through the pandemic. Oh, sorry, was that?
no,
Do you
no,
have time
no.
to
I
get?
think no. I listened to that story, and I think this is a life saving piece of
Absolutely.
functionality. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
this is information that's critical to have to keep more people safe, right? And
Yeah.
information that is absolutely vital. So to be able to shorten that span is, I
Yeah.
mean, that's tremendously exciting.
Yeah, and just through the pandemic, we actually had the FDA and multiple healthcare authorities, even in the EMA and the MHRA in the UK, uh, we're using Box to actually conduct inspections of the life sciences industry. So
Okay.
in the life sciences, there's several actors. There's sponsors who are developing the drug. There's
Right.
CROs who are running the trials, and then there's healthcare authorities, and they all are kind of auditing each other all the time. It's just how we grew up.
And you want
Auditing.
that though. I mean, right?
You absolutely do. You absolutely
Yeah,
do. It's a critical part of the industry to maintain the quality and efficacy of a drug, right? You want that,
absolutely.
absolutely, to maintain, safety data and
Right.
efficacy and quality. But the processes previously were very manual. Normally, getting inspected by a healthcare authority meant you drop everything you're doing. You have an inspector that comes into your office, and you basically sit with them in the conference room, and they will randomly ask you for things and documents and pieces of records that they want to see, and you have to run around getting it, and you kill a couple of trees in the process. So there was this concept of doing these inspections and audits virtually before the pandemic. It was an edge use case that basically became mainstream through the pandemic, and now people don't want to go back. So this is one of the silver lining use cases. But
Yeah.
even healthcare authorities now are kind of seeing the light. Like, they don't want to fly all over the world inspecting people.
Right.
If you can get the right content digitally, you can view it digitally. You can automate the process. You can have access stats to see who's viewing what,
Right.
and maintain the security and compliance controls around it, and a digital chain of custody. Like, that's
Right.
ideal for both parties. So that's another
Absolutely.
process that we're
Yeah.
supporting a lot of our customers with today as well.
Well, and not to mention the eco-friendly portion
Yeah,
of, people not getting on airplanes and flying to do
yes,
physical
yes,
inspections. So, it's a win for all. Well,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. So we have worked with Box and done a short research brief on this topic that I will be sure and include in the show notes for today's conversation. I will also include a link to Box's site where you can find some more information on their life science solutions. And I will include a link to my friend Manu's LinkedIn profile. But with that, I think our conversation is a wrap. And Manu Vohra, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I love hearing what you and the team at Box are doing in the life sciences industry. And I think the solutions that you've developed are really very exciting.
Thanks, Shelly. Thanks for having me.